Welcome everybody to Papa Spice's Hot Takes with Hans and Harry. How's everyone doing today? Hans, how about you? How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Watched another good Marvel series, so we're gonna deep dive into it. So far, Marvel's knocking it out 2 for 2, and I'm just really excited to jump right into it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that they put quality first and foremost. So glad to hear you're doing good. Harry, looks like you're coming from a dark cave somewhere. How you doing, buddy?
Listen. The wife had some friends over tonight, so I needed to find a nice quiet place. So I'm at my parents' house. So we're recording from a dark cave that used to be my old room. So yeah, that's a cool thing.
Nice. Well, glad you're doing good. As Hans kind of alluded to, we are discussing the Falcon and the Winter Soldier today.
Yeah.
So, very excited. We're just gonna do a deep dive on the series as a whole. We're not gonna necessarily go episode by episode, but just kind of touch on the points that we like or that stood out to us. So, with that being said, let's dive right in. And of course, spoiler alert, major spoilers here. So if you're not caught up, if you haven't seen the show yet, whatever, go catch up or watch the show and come back, give us a listen or a watch. But kicking right off, man, it opens into some heavy action with the Falcon versus the LAF forces. And I thought that scene felt very cinematic. Definitely felt like a part of the MCU. What did you guys think?
Yeah, that the quality, like I feel like the quality of that is definitely cinema friendly in terms of like I would have loved to seen that in like an IMAX format and like just yeah it just kind of just opens with like you're like, all right, Falcon is basically in the MCU like a B-level character in terms of like he's just a supporting character. So it's like in order to kick the show off with just him right away and seeing like what exactly he can do and and go like is he like he's still working for the government, like whether or not like is he an Avenger, like I kind of am not sure at this point, but he's still working with the US military. But you learn a lot in those first few minutes of terms of like what his kind of like his suit can really do. And I thought it was a really good introduction to just bring him into like just to kind of focus on the fact that he is going to be essentially the main character of the show. So but I thought it was great. It sets up Torres as is it Torres or is it Ramir? I forget am I mixing
I
that
think
up?
it was Torres.
Is Torres, yeah.
Yeah,
It sets up
right.
Torres, like his relationship with Sam, and then you have Batroc who comes back, who's and we'll mention him later. He's like the scarecrow of the MCU, where he just shows up and usually gets his butt handed to him. So
Aaron, what'd you
Nice.
think?
I thought I was curious if the show was going to go in a Mandalorian type fashion, where it's kind of an adventure every week type fashion for the show. I think when the trailers, or maybe it was that second trailer that came out, I could tell that might be a little bit different. But I had a little bit of a concern because that's not always my cup of tea. As much as I love Mandalorian, I was worried that it would just be, oh, here's Sam doing his adventure, and Bucky comes along for one of them, and they disagree on one of them. But when that first action sequence kicked off with those two fighting, that was pretty dope. Some of the cool flight scenes and using Red Wing was pretty fun. Red Wing, didn't know he was so important to Bucky and such a nemesis for him, but really cool.
Side note, in the comics, Red Wing is an actual Falcon, not a
Yeah.
robot.
yeah,
Well, that's what makes
So,
it so interesting.
yeah, I'm glad they got AI for this because I don't think Red Wing would have held up too long in that fight. Um, but so moving on from the opening action sequence, we kind of have Bucky trying to adapt to civilian life for the first time, which was a pretty interesting look. What would you guys think about that?
this was the most interesting, like kind of aspect, like going into the show. Like I wanted to know the most about Bucky because I'm pretty sure in the one scene that he had with the therapist was more words that he's spoken in the entire MCU before this point, like in all the movies. He didn't get a lot of kind of, I guess, story background in terms of like, or at least when he was unfrozen after he stopped becoming the Winter Soldier till this point, because the poor guy, like basically every time he's around, like he has to fight someone, like he hasn't really seen like any kind of peace. So I
Right.
think, and the fact that he got pardoned and, you know, the government was kind of like, all right, you had this like kind of dark past, but you know, you've done enough to at least be able to be free now, but you under our conditions. It was cool to see him like basically be in therapy and like try to adapt to just being a regular guy, because he's not that soldier anymore. He's just kind of just a guy with a metal arm. But you see like his relationship with some of the locals, like the father of the son that one of his missions. I love that whole storyline.
Mm-hmm.
I loved him trying to go out on a date because like he's basically like 100 years old and doesn't know how to like just have casual interactions. But I thought that was really neat. And like I said, we've gotten some Falcon background before from Civil War and from Winter Soldier. But since then we don't really know too much about like how Bucky is, how he's doing now. So I liked how they kicked it off with basically like him in therapy.
Mm-hmm. Our thoughts or feelings on Bucky?
Yeah, I mean, Bucky's been dealing with trauma. I think he says it in the episode for like 90 years or whatever it is. You know, there's that great scene when he's with therapist and Sam. I think it was episode either 2 or 3 when after he gets arrested, and, you know, he has that moment where he's questioning kind of, you know, was Steve right, you know, wrong about, you know, if Bucky could be, you know, come back to Bucky and not be the Winter Soldier. So it was nice to see his development even through Wakanda, you know, jumping 6 years back through there. I mean, he's definitely one of my wife's favorite characters because she thinks he's handsome. Not as good as Steve Rogers, but I definitely.
She's just in it for the eye candy, huh?
listen. She's in it for Steve Rogers' values too. You know, as this show dives into that, you know, there's never been another Steve Rogers, but Bucky for me, I wouldn't say. I mean, I know you guys ranked the Winter Soldier higher on your list than I did when we did our Marvel movie rankings as a favorite, and I think that comes from kind of Sebastian Stan's, you know, performance, you know, with how well he plays the character. So for me, you know, diving into Bucky's trauma was definitely an interesting thing for me, but I would say I would more interested in, you know, Anthony Mackie and the Falcons, you know, kind of development of where he was going to go and how he was going to pick up the mantle, or, you know, what he was going to decide to do. But yeah, the Bucky struggles were definitely interesting to see, because I think he's also used a little bit for comic relief with, you know, some of his one-liners with, you know, when
he's kind of like the straight man.
Yeah, when Carly breaks Red Wing, because I, you know, mentioned in Red Wing earlier, he's like, I've always wanted to do that, as he's getting, you know, his butt kicked. But yeah, I mean, him and the Yuri storyline was definitely touching too. I mean, they touched on the first episode and circle back towards the end, which was, you know, nice to see. I mean, it's a little sad that he kind of strung him along like that, but, you know, he's obviously dealing with, you know, all these heinous crimes that he's had to commit and try to be the person that he can be.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I really dug the Yuri storyline, and I thought that, you know, it was a interesting take rather than just focus on, hey, this is Bucky, he's Steve's friend, and, you know, that's all he cares about. They gave him, you know, his own plotline and character development to go through, where he's, you know, trying to overcome this trauma and make amends to all these people he wronged, you know, unwillingly in his past life as the Winter Soldier. So that was pretty cool. You mentioned Anthony Mackie and, you know, his Sam Wilson's kind of character arc and, you know, the struggles he's dealing with. I thought it was pretty interesting in episode 1 to see him, you know, go in that bank and him and his sis were denied the loan. You know, it kind of heartbreaking and kind of relatable, I guess, to a lot of people. So it was good that they gave him, they gave both characters, I should say, a way to develop, and, you know, the struggles of normal people and what they go through, whether it's a soldier with PTSD or a man trying to just, you know, help his sister save their family's legacy. So that was pretty neat.
Yeah, and you learn a lot in that bank scene. Just when you bring that up, is that like I've always thought about it, like in the back of my mind when I watch these type of movies where like you think about it, like how are these people earning livings? Like how much do they make? Like and you basically find out like Iron Man wasn't paying these people, but then I
Which
thought
is
about
crappy,
it,
by the way.
which is crappy.
Yeah,
but, then,
absolutely.
but then I said the same thing because I was like I went on Twitter and it was like after the episode and a lot of people were like giving Tony some crap about it.
Mhm.
But then I thought I'm like wait a minute. I was like first of all, if anything, Sam went with Cap and went against Tony, so Tony probably like may have been sending him a check and cut that off right away. But yeah, I agree. Like you do learn so much, like, and it is relatable with a lot of people where it's just like this guy's like is basically world famous. Like they know him, they call him the Falcon, and he wants to like get his picture taken and like get an autograph. But at the same time, he's just kind of like the banker's just like, nah, I can't do anything for you. Like, and
Right.
it's sad.
But
to
let me
see,
get that selfie.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it really is unfortunate to see like that struggle that him and his family are having, even though like he basically like saved the world or helped save the world. So it's
Yeah.
it is a really like you learn a lot in that scene, just not necessarily from the character standpoint, but just like you said, they do eventually also go into like the fact of like other people who were part of the blip, and like Sam was part of that. Like how was he gonna do anything for 5 years?
Yeah. So fast forwarding, we get to the end of the episode and the John Walker as Captain America reveal, blah, blah, blah. We'll get to John Walker in a minute, but I gotta say, as solid as Falcon and Winter Soldier was, the first episode didn't quite grab me. I don't know what it was, but I guess, kind of looking at what we had from WandaVision, I was just so wowed and impressed, and it set the bar really high that this first episode was like, okay, this is good, but I don't know if it's going to get better or not. Which I'm happy to say it did for me, but that was my thoughts on the initial episode. Were you guys hooked immediately, or did you have trepidation like myself? Harry, what do you think?
Yeah, I think for me, I after the first episode, I was kind of sold. I felt the subject matter and the development of the, or talking about the stories for those characters, Bucky and for Sam, were definitely driving me in. I was kind of surprised that most people, on social media were a little bit meh on it after the first episode, even yourself. But I do see where it's like coming off the high of Wanda, especially so close. It was only 1 week after they had that special behind the scenes, and it was like 2 weeks, the week after it was like, here's Falcon and Winter Soldier. I wonder if there would be the same feelings with WandaVision if WandaVision had come out. I think it was supposed to come out second originally in the show's order. So I wonder off the high of this, if people would have came and been like, Wanda's a little slow. With that, but I was actually kind of hooked right away. I actually enjoyed a lot. I enjoyed the 5th episode, which towards the end more than I enjoyed the last episode. I really enjoy it when they kind of slow things down and kind of have these, characters kind of do more development than they do with the kind of big action set pieces, because the set piece in the last episode is almost half the episode. Actually, it's more the majority of it, because the episodes are about an hour, but they're really like, I have to get through all the countries where they changed all the language and everything. You're really down to a cool like 48 minutes for it. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I was hooked immediately though. Long answer for that, folks. But yeah, I was hooked immediately.
Hans, how about you?
I was somewhere in the middle, because I do agree at the fact where like it doesn't necessarily catch you, but I think that a lot of it was it opened with such a great set piece. And I think that like coming off of WandaVision, like WandaVision, like the way that story was told was excellent. And it was like, I think it was like almost like close to perfection in terms of like a storytelling standpoint. Now, I think that like there wasn't anything like clever going on. It was a very straightforward episode to just say like, this is where Sam is, this is where Bucky is. And I didn't rewatch the first episode, but I don't even think they touch on the Flag Smashers that much. Like I think very briefly they do, when Torres goes to like investigate them. But other than that, like it's pretty much just like they introduced like the threat, but it wasn't a wow factor for me. until like once I saw the and I know they showed this in promos and everything. Once they showed John Walker, like that's where I kind of was like, this is the last shot. I'm like, it looks like Mr. Fredrickson in the Captain America outfit in that first shot. But I think that it did its job to introduce, like to get us interested. But I agree, I wasn't like just blown away like I was like with the first episode of WandaVision.
Yeah. Okay. So we get the John Walker reveal at the end of episode 1, and then episode 2 kind of starts with him getting introduced to America via Good Morning America. But when they're in the locker rooms, Hoskins says something which is kind of foreshadowing, I think, for John Walker, and he says, "This suit comes with expectations. You can't just punch your way out of problems anymore." So let's talk John Walker for a second and how we thought he did. I thought Wyatt Russell as the character was good. He was somebody that I love to hate, but he is the epitome for me of what is wrong with people abusing power and just going over the top. And he sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Maybe we should just let Chris go off on this one now.
Yeah, Hans, I know you got some hot takes, so we'll circle back to me. Why don't you tell us your thoughts on Mr. John Walker?
All right, so let's just start off by saying, like, and like you said, Wyatt Russell did a phenomenal job at this role, because he is a character that, like, when you're watching it, like, you're not supposed to like him because he's not Steve Rogers. Like, for God, how long? I don't even know when Captain America was released. The first Avenger was, I guess, like early or like 2011 or 2012. We like basically like we've been like seeing the adventures of Steve Rogers, the only Captain America that we've known, and up until Endgame. Now Wyatt Russell comes along, or John Walker comes along, and you're not supposed to like him on that fact alone, at the fact that he is not Steve Rogers. And he's very like, his first reaction is to go in, like, he doesn't think like through the scenario. And that's why I love that. I love his character so much, because it was basically the exact opposite of Steve Rogers. I didn't want like someone to pretend to be another Steve Rogers, which, and sometimes he tries to do, but he's just like, he basically is like a Captain America that is not like what he should be. Like, he's, like you said, you can't punch your way out of it. And I was like, I don't even know if I want to say this. I was more invested with his story in a few episodes of learning that, like, basically he was a soldier who earned his Medal of Honors, and like he had like 3 Medal of Honors, and he said he's like jumped on grenades like 4 times. Like, he's a real soldier. And we'll get to this a little later, because I know once we get to the scene after episode 4 in the courtroom, when he's getting like basically like discharged, I think up at that point, I'm like, I was more interested in his story than Steve Rogers. And I thought, like, and that's why I'm like very careful with what I say.
It's a spicy meatball.
Because I don't mean it anything, because Captain America is my favorite superhero, as Steve Rogers. But I don't want to go too long on this. It just, I think that the way he kind of like was just someone who picked up the mantle. Like, he didn't have a super soldier. Like, he honestly was doing his best and what he thought was the right thing to do. And I just love to see him evolve and basically break down to the point of, at the end of episode 4, or even into episode 5, where he basically has like serious PTSD. He like ends up taking the superhero soldier, like he basically has 2 sets of Captain Americas, like one without it, one with, and you can tell like how it like just changes him to the point where he ends up getting, like, I don't want to say court-martialed, but he's like dishonorably discharged. And I was so invested in the character of how he developed in like 4 or 5 episodes of this show. Now, I'm not going to say like I love him more than Steve Rogers, but like I just felt like Steve Rogers was pretty much like he got defrosted and came out, and like he was just trying to adapt, and he was like, I still love Steve Rogers more, but I just love seeing Wyatt Russell develop as John Walker throughout the series. But I'm going to touch on a little bit once we get to the finale, because I have some kind of things to say about that. But
okay, Harry, I'll get to you in 1 second, but I remembered what I had forgotten to say. but yeah, so the thing with John Walker as Captain America, so he is trying to be Captain America his own way. I don't think he's trying to live up to Steve Rogers, which is okay. That's understandable. But the second he takes that super soldier serum, it's like, it's just bad news, because Erskine in the original Captain America movie, talks to Steve Rogers pre-op about the serum, and he's like, look, if you're a good person, it'll amplify that. Good becomes great. If you're a bad person, bad becomes evil. It's the worst. And I'm not saying John Walker is a bad guy or anything, but clearly, he has some traumatic issues, whether it's PTSD or whatever. And when he takes the serum, all that just gets amplified, and he kind of goes over the deep end to the point where it's like he can't refuse, or he refuses to give up the mantle when he clearly made an error in judgment and killed a guy. And then to the point where, he, even after refusing to give up the title and being stripped of the title of Captain America, he decides to, make his own gear, and I'm going to do this anyway. Like,
that was the worst shield I've ever seen. Like, I think like one of the Flag Smashers punched it, and the thing was like basically destroyed right away.
Well, I mean, Cap shield is made of vibranium.
I know.
This dude is like welding steel together. It's
this dude like made
trying the best he can.
Whatever whatever DeLoreans were made out of, this is what this guy used for it.
I mean, he had a cosplay shield. It's okay. So I don't know. That's my thoughts on John Walker. I think the character was portrayed the correct way. I don't like him, but I don't think I'm supposed to either. But there is some nuance in there. Harry, how did you feel about John Walker and Wyatt Russell's performance?
I think while Wyatt Russell hit it out of the park, I mean, son of Kurt Russell, I mean, it's kind of easy to, be good at acting, hopefully, when that's your father. But, I'm disappointed at some of the backlash he received from fans, with not understanding that, he's playing a character, he's acting, he's a person, this is a character. So that was a little bit disappointing to see, via the internet. But I mean, people are so passionate about this show. I mean, we're talking about it, it's one of our, must watches for our list. So I get that, but you got to be able to separate people from, their characters. But as far as the character, this is something I struggle with a lot with the Marvel universe, of not having enough, I want to say, either good, like Loki's, I guess, like good bad guys, where
right.
You hate to love them in a way. And I felt like his character was really doing that. Like Chris said, there was a couple episodes there where it almost felt like, the John Walker show, Falcon Winter Soldier. You know what I mean? So I feel as though they were really trying to invest in him. And, he has a line, like you were saying earlier, Greg, where I'm not trying to be Steve. I'm trying to be the best Captain America I can be. And that like goes so far into showing you like he wants to just be the best version of himself. He understands that he's not going to be Steve Rogers. Everyone else understands that. And that's what makes it so much fun to watch. You're watching somebody who isn't going to be Steve Rogers, but he's trying his best to do what he thinks is right, but he's making wrong decisions. They even talk about like how good he is at his decision making, but you can see how he gets influenced, multiple times, when Lamar dies, to, when even at the last episode, when it's like, hey, you got a choice whether to go after Carly or try to save people. And, you can see him struggling with that choice, where I think for Steve Rogers, it would be, automatic. Like, I know how to save these people, or how to fix this situation. But I love the character. I loved the end of, I think it was episode 4 with the whole world watching, when, he has to, kill that guy with the shield. Just that scene. I love the way they kind of framed him and showed him. Like, they do a lot of close-ups of John Walker in action. But like you said, Greg, I think you're supposed to love to hate him. And those are characters that I really enjoy, because you're like, oh boy, what's he going to do next?
Right.
And even like his movements, like with Wyatt Russell, like, I'm sorry, Greg. I like, one of the things like I noticed is like, he's so good at it. And whether or not, like, I don't, I wasn't there for the making of like on the set or anything, but like, even just the small things that you notice with like John Walker, where like he has like a twitch, like of like a lot, like where like they'll do a close up and his head will kind of just do like that. And you can tell like he's not in the right frame of mind to like basically hold this mantle, but he's going to keep trying. But and especially you notice it like at that scene when he kills the Flag Smasher, where he's kind of just like, he realizes everyone is watching. But I mean, the next episode opens with him running away, realizing like, what did I do? But he kind of just stands there and he just seems like very like at that point he is unhinged. But there are hints leading up to it, like even when like the Dora Milaje like show up and he gets beat by them, like his first words were like, they weren't even super soldiers.
Super soldiers.
Yeah, like
right.
and I think that's where like he decided to take the serum, where he's just like, I'm not going to live up to Captain America if this stuff keeps happening. And I think like, you know, that's what led him to the serum. But I like you just his motions, like if you rewatch it are like, and a lot of it goes to Wyatt, like in his acting, but he's just, I think that's another thing to keep in mind of just like him, like his struggles going through the whole season. So,
yeah.
I will say one thing I can do without is the trope that if someone is slightly unhinged, they have, you know, a 5 o'clock shadow or a slight bit of scruff on their face. Like as soon as, yeah, Harry's clean shaven, for those only listening. But as soon as, you know, he kind of snaps or whatever, all of a sudden he's growing his facial hair out.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, that's so played out. As an advocate for facial hair,
yeah,
and
that beard
the styles
grew,
of today,
that beard grew like 2 weeks in like 1 minute. Like
right.
by next
If
episode.
he was shaving every day as Captain America, then it's like day one off the job. I'm not shaving anymore. Look at me.
Yeah.
Right. So please, Hollywood, if you're listening, cut that out. One of the things I absolutely loved, and this was just huge for me, is the introduction to the MCU of Isaiah and Elijah Bradley. They debuted, specifically Isaiah, debuted in a Marvel miniseries called Truth, Red, White, and Black. And basically his origin story was kept intact for, you know, his introduction here. And go out of your way if you're interested in comics at all to read that story, because it is so good and, you know, heart-wrenching to see, you know, what was done in the name of science to, you know, our Black servicemen, at least fictionally, but, you know, I'm sure things happened in reality as well, with the Tuskegee experiment and all that stuff. But I was very happy that they gave him some time to shine, and they introduced both Isaiah and his grandson Elijah, who, and I know you got, Harry, you're not the biggest comic fan, but Elijah becomes Patriot, who is basically the Captain America of the Young Avengers. So he would fit in with the Scarlet Witch and Vision's kids, Billy and Tommy. And I'm hoping that's what they're leading to, because we know we're getting Haley Steinfeld as Kate Bishop, who was Hawkeye. Cassie Lang has already been introduced. So we've got almost all of the players for Young Avengers, and I'm hoping they bring that together. But Young Avengers is besides the point. Yeah.
If anybody wants to hear about our Young Avengers theory as well, you could listen to our WandaVision podcast where we discuss that as well.
Absolutely. But seeing Isaiah here, just tremendous. Every time he was on screen, for me, he chewed the scenery. He just, you know, the actor that played him, I don't have his name off the top of my head, but he did a tremendous job. I thought the makeup on him to age him was not the greatest. It stood out a little bit. But other than that, very cool. So what do you guys think about Isaiah and Elijah? You guys looking forward to seeing more of Elijah? How'd you feel about Isaiah's story?
I thought it was cool. I didn't read the Truth comic. I've been wanting to, but I know just of who Elijah or Isaiah was. So like I knew kind of the history of it without reading the comic. So, but other than that, I'm really cool that they introduced it. Like it was a very small part in terms of just like kind of giving Bucky that backstory and him knowing like basically as a resource and trying to like get him to help. And you learn a lot in that one scene of just like, for the most part, everyone, like the general public and most people, and in the show, I say that they only know one Captain America, which is Steve Rogers.
Right.
And they weren't aware that there were other experiments that were being completed, and then not necessarily the Tuskegee experiments. I'm sure they might have known about them, but to take like a comic book kind of topic, like a super soldier serum, and know that they were using that on their soldiers as well. And basically he was a Black Captain America. And I think for the general public of people who are watching that show, they didn't really know that history as well. So I thought that was really cool to know that there was a Captain America while Steve Rogers was frozen. And there was a lot of history behind that character, at least hidden history. And I thought that, like you said, the actor who played him like knocked it out of the park. And we see later there's a couple other scenes that he has where it really was well done. I love how they introduced Elijah because, like you said, the Young Avengers are pretty much coming together. I think the only one that's not necessarily confirmed is Ironheart, but that might be
right.
But I think everyone else is pretty much lined up.
I mean, she's gonna have a show, but yeah,
yeah,
we haven't
but
got to her yet.
think but I think like introducing him, for those aware of who he is in the comics, I think leading to the Young Avengers is a really cool Easter egg to like move forward. But the whole scene was like was very dark scene, like, and it's very like just you can kind of feel the mood with just the setting. But I thought that the whole thing and he gets another scene later in the show was done perfectly. Like he was definitely a character that needed to be there, and his story needed to be there in order for Sam to eventually become Captain America.
Harry, what are your thoughts on Isaiah?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say a little bit of what Chris was saying. I mean, I think it's an important also kind of connection for Sam and for Bucky to kind of have a link there as well, besides having Steve Rogers. I think it also goes to show kind of in this universe how much, I guess, glorified Captain America was and how people continued to look at him when there was like, hey, there was these other, possible super soldiers that, didn't get the chance and the opportunity that was given to, Steve Rogers and stuff. While not a huge fan of the comics, I would probably be in on Young Avengers, with it, being exciting, and bringing in, maybe a future generation there for it. But I hope we see more of Isaiah. I hope we see more, whether Falcon and Winter Soldier continues as a show, whether it moves to, just one of their shows, or whether we get some backstory for them. But yeah, I liked how it helped kind of build a bridge for Sam and Bucky and their relationship to kind of build from that as well.
Yeah. I don't know that we'll get more Isaiah. I think his character arc kind of wrapped up here.
Yeah, that's true too.
And I'm glad that they did wrap it up rather than just leaving him as a one-off in, episode 2 or whatever it was. I'm glad that, they took him from being disillusioned with the idea like, oh, a black man could never carry those stars and stripes based off of what I went through, to him seeing Sam and Sam kind of restoring hope and faith in him. And even as I'm talking about it right now, but in the finale, when Sam takes Isaiah to, I'm assuming the Smithsonian, and they have the Cap exhibit, and he's got his own statue and stuff, like I got goosebumps, dude.
Yeah, that was incredible.
I was really happy that they were able to give that character some love. Moving on from Isaiah and Elijah, Flag Smasher rewrite theory.
Yeah.
You guys want to talk about that?
If I don't know if you guys know, like, kind of looked into anything like with this, but this is kind of what threw me off into what made me think that there might have been a little something else. So when you first are introduced to the Flag Smashers and they're stealing that truck that's full of vaccines, this was actually from what I remember reading, and it's like I don't think it was ever confirmed, but it's like a theory that there was apparently supposed to be the storyline with the Flag Smashers was supposed to revolve around a worldwide pandemic or a worldwide disease, which had to get rewritten because of COVID. And you could tell, like, I wasn't a huge fan of the Flag Smasher story. I think you can tell, like, when you rewatch, like, a couple of the episodes I rewatched, and you could tell, like, there's a lot of it is like very off. And you think about, like, when Bucky says, like, oh, they're transporting vaccines, like, what? But that's never mentioned again about any kind of sickness. And I think they probably kept that in probably because they couldn't reshoot it, because it leads up to like a giant action scene. So they're probably like at that point, like, let's just leave it in, or kind of,
I think they start to mention like medicine at some points, like, when they're talking about dialogue to kind of replace it.
Like Carly's I guess mother, or I wasn't sure who that, or like
Danya
Mama
Madani,
Danya.
which was
Yeah.
she was like a mother figure for her.
yeah, she ended up dying from a disease, which I'm pretty sure, like whatever it was, like I don't know if
Tuberculosis.
tuberculosis, which
Mhm.
may have been like what the vaccine was for, or like I don't know, but it was supposed to be a
Right.
bigger story of, but I think at the time they did a lot of
That's
rewrites,
interesting.
and like I said, I wasn't a fan of the Flag Smasher story because I don't think it was entirely clear. And I
Yeah.
think because at some point they had one story, but they probably realized they couldn't film the entire thing over again. And after they mentioned it, I think it was like episode 3 or 4, I kind of dug into it and I'm like, this just doesn't really make sense, I guess.
Yeah.
Like what their real intentions are. And I think, and I went back to when Bucky said they're transporting vaccines, and then a lot of people I noticed online were pointing out the same thing where they said, this was a big kind of plot hole. I don't necessarily like a plot hole, but definitely like there was some kind of redirection done when they were filming or rewriting it, because I guess they didn't want to really bring any kind of similar COVID situation into this, like a storyline, being it too soon. And they were filming this in the middle of the pandemic. So
It was
yeah.
their story was definitely muddled, because the first thing that we hear is, well, they want to get the world back to the way that it was during the blip, where everybody kind of realized you have to work together because there's not nations anymore. Half the world's population just disappeared. We
Right.
we kind of got to band together. But then they're later working to make sure that refugees don't get moved into these quasi internment camps or whatever. And it's like, that's not really what your mission statement is. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense that there was like an alternate plot, and then they had to kind of rework everything because they don't want to make it too real.
Right.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's why, like, and I love Carly's character and her development. Like, I don't think the way she portrayed, I forget her name, but I loved her in Rogue One. I thought she was fantastic in Rogue One. Or not Rogue One, Solo. I'm sorry. But she wasn't Solo. Yeah, I can't remember her name, but I think she portrayed the character well. But other than that, like, it was very like kind of all over the place at one point. Like, I feel like their mission wasn't the same in episode 1 as it was by the time the season was over.
Right. Harry, did the Flag Smashers hit for you?
I mean, I think for me, it's a little bit missing because now, again, this is looking at Spider, because this takes place before Spider-Man Homecoming, correct? If I read the timeline right, from stuff I've read online.
I don't know, because in Homecoming we see the blip where everybody gets returned.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It could.
I think it's like this is supposed to be after WandaVision, but before.
Because WandaVision's like directly right after the blip /
and I think this is in between WandaVision and Far From Home, if I remember the timeline correctly.
I think so too. And the reason I say that is because we're starting to build, like, I could see it, down the line, 2 movies, 2 other shows, whatever it is, where they're talking about, this started with the Flag Smashers, and now, X villain or X organization is starting to, carry that work or that idea from it. But I definitely felt as though it was a little bit clunky, I guess is the best way to put it, with how they were kind of rolling out that story. So I would definitely agree that it didn't really hit for me. But this kind of happens a lot, with these shows, like even like with WandaVision, where you're like, who's the real villain? And is it Director Hayward? Is it Agatha? Is it, now Bizarro Vision? Is it Wanda? Like, I feel like those sometimes with these, movies, not much, or with the shows, not as much with the movies, they kind of have this issue so far that I've seen where it's like, we're throwing a lot at you and a lot of characters, and a lot of it's going to hit, but 1 or 2 things is going to miss.
Yeah. Talking about another character here who was kind of a villain, kind of a helper, but Zemo. I absolutely loved his story. I love that they brought him in. Daniel Bruhl, I can't get enough of him.
Amazing. Love him.
It was cool that we got to see the classic Zemo look with the trench coat with the fur and the purple mask. I love that they retconned him to being a Baron like he is in the comics. I I mean, just all around everything with Zemo, I loved. My biggest takeaway from this, though, is I need a Thunderbolts show. For the uninitiated, the Thunderbolts is a super team led by Baron Zemo, who basically they're villains in disguise as heroes. And they're operating on behalf of the government, but they basically had a bunch of B-level villains that just assumed new identities, and people didn't know the difference until it came out in the public later on. But they do include some major players later on, like John Walker, the U.S. agent, and Red Hulk and Venom and Punisher were parts of it. So, and it's not always, but mostly led by Zemo.
It's funny to me because I know, and it makes me think of your world, Greg, with wrestling, like how much comics and like wrestlings and storytelling are like, let's just get these guys who like don't work all together, like separately, put them together on a team. And now they're like a super team. And it's like, oh, now these make sense. And then what we'll do is we'll recruit another top tier villain to kind of join it. So it's kind of funny that way, but
it's a beautiful thing. I never made that connection, but that's probably the reason why I love both wrestling and comics so dearly.
It's basically Marvel Suicide Squad for the most part.
Yeah. That's not a bad way to put it.
Yeah.
So Harry, what Zemo, talk to me.
Listen, I mean, if you want to watch Thor and Zemo drive around in race cars, go see Rush. But as far as
I watched half of that last night.
Nice.
It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel Brohl is just great. I love the fact that we got the Zemo cut of him in the club dancing, living it up. That was pretty hilarious. I showed that to the wife, and I always use her as a barometer for, do regular people enjoy this? And so she did. But yeah, I mean, the Zemo character, I think a lot of people, from, whether it be you guys or some of our other friends, were like, yeah, Zemo they didn't really do him justice in the movie. And I think this was kind of return a little bit to form. I'll be interested to see what happens with him, being sentenced to prison in Wakanda or wherever they're going to hold him. Obviously he'll return, that old thing of, we just see him go away. But yeah, as far as, the one question I would ask, and I mean, I know for story purposes this would happen, but like, there's no one else on the Hydra food chain they could have went to who is less dangerous and less, crazy than Zemo. Like, I guess they got those people wiped out. Like maybe Bucky took care of all of them in his list. But I just thought it was funny. It was like, you guys didn't think of like anyone else first? Like nobody?
Well, yeah. I mean, I assume most of that Hydra chain has been wiped out, and even Zemo wasn't actually part of Hydra. He used Hydra's info, like he tortured that one Hydra dude.
You were correct with that.
But yeah, I think they just they thought he's crazy enough to work with us to get rid of these super soldiers. Hans, what'd you think about Zemo?
Yeah. I in Civil War, he's so depressing, and he and that takes into account like Daniel Bruhl's like acting with it, like portrayal to the character. Now, I remember like when they first said they were going to bring Zemo in, like in Civil War, you don't really necessarily like he doesn't have the mask in Civil War. He doesn't have like he doesn't do anything. Like all he basically is like he gets the Avengers against each other, but he's not like a physical threat. Like he's not a I don't want to call he is a villain, but
even the super soldiers he kills, it's all like off screen. Like you don't really see any physical.
Exactly. And you don't necessarily like he basically just seems like a regular guy who, and that's how they portrayed him in Civil War. And to see him like basically like when he puts that mask on, which as far as I know, that mask does not give him superpowers. It just he puts the mask on for one scene and just owns a bunch of the where they were flag smashers or were they
they were
in Madripoor.
Yeah.
So he just like owns them like no problem. And it's so like I loved seeing him put on the mask, and I love seeing how like they brought so much personality to that character in just a few scenes. And in all of Civil War, he was just moping around. And this way, like you have him like kind of interacting with other people, like when he's dancing and like he's in public, which I love. And just like how he just interacts with Sam and Bucky. Like I don't necessarily like I didn't see him as a villain in the show. He was kind of like that anti-hero, I guess, formula. Because he never really did anything to hurt Sam or Bucky, and his plan was never to to basically hurt them. He like may have tried to use them, but at the same time, he wasn't like his main purpose wasn't to take down like Sam or Bucky or any of the good guys. Like we find out like towards the end, he's playing the long game with a lot of this. But I love this scene where like they basically, like you said, they retcon him in a matter of like 2 sentences when he says like, oh, like Sam says like, you got a plane. He's like, yeah, he's like, I'm a baron. Like I was a baron before my family was killed. Like I got money.
It was the equivalent of the Cheadle. I'm here. It's me. Get used to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was perfect. It was like so good. Like just in that one scene, they're like, and like what, like the scene on the plane with his butler where he's talking about like, give them all the expired food, like if they want it. And Sam and Bucky have no idea what they're saying to each other. Like there was a I think his character was generally more humorous than serious through this role, like in the series, but not in like a slapstick kind of way, but it was very well done. Cause like he's like that smooth talking, like, that smooth talking character. Like you don't really know whether or not you want to trust them or not. So
Apex Mountain for Turkish delights, this or Lion the Witch in the Wardrobe.
I was gonna say, have you ever had a Turkish delight?
I have. They're pretty good. I wouldn't say they're the best.
I haven't had one though.
They wouldn't make me want to like either trust a witch or trust some rando stranger that could like gives them to me in an alley.
I will say I did love Zemo. He sticks to his own coda, man. He has his own rules that he plays by and his mission, and even when briefly tempted by the super soldier serums on the ground, he shows zero hesitation, just starts smashing them. He's like, nope, don't need this,
gone.
So I thought that was really well done. Kudos to Zemo's treatment. And one of the things, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, like did they explain like why he smashed the super soldier? Like does he just not want them like that? Like does he just not, like, why does he smash them? Is it because he told like Sam he'd help him destroy it? Or like is he really a man of his word? Or is he just like, is he out for his own? Like it's very like weird, like why he did that.
My take on it is he is against any and all superhumans. And he sees working with Sam and Bucky as like a means to an end. It's like, okay, well, I can get rid of them down the line, but these guys are going to help me get rid of the 20 super soldiers running around right now at this moment.
Right. Okay, that's
so fair. Yeah, when he saw those vials, that's why it was stompy right away. But I will say too, like this was one of the things that I loved about WandaVision, but like I'm so happy all of these characters who are kind of like characters that would not get the time of day in the movie format are getting more characterization and the ability to kind of stretch and getting backstory and all this stuff in the show.
It's also a little wild that you say that when it's like the last 5 to 10 Marvel movies are like borderline 3 hours long, that like these characters don't get like the development that they should in 3-hour movies.
Well, and I mean, to be fair, it's like whenever it's one of these movies, it's usually the Cap, Thor, and Tony show. As far as Avengers movies go. So, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I love all those movies, but it's cool that, we're getting to see, Sam and Zemo and Bucky and Isaiah and all these other characters stretch their wings.
I agree. And even like moving forward with like Loki, and like, he's not necessarily like, I wouldn't say he's like a B tier. Like he's like, was one of like probably the best villains in phase 1. But in order like to
a lot in common with Zemo, just as far as like the love,
and I don't even think like I wouldn't even consider Loki a villain. Like I guess like I guess maybe Thor 1, but everything beyond that, I never really saw him as a bad guy. Like he was never
a trickster.
Avengers 2. All right, I'll give Avengers.
Chris was one of the audience members in Thor Ragnarok clapping for the scene for Loki during the play.
Yeah,
Loki did great. Oh my gosh, Loki, way to go!
You could hear my tears hitting the floor when he died in Infinity War. But I just love like I mean other than like Avengers, like, but I think anything beyond, I would say Avengers is he's not necessarily a bad, like he tries to help Thor, like he's a god of mischief, like that his thing is to like cause mischief. But you're right, like to see like their two first like the series after their movies, like how they're setting up their next phase, are B-level characters, and they already hit it out of the park with WandaVision, with Wanda and Vision, and to like Sam and Bucky, like we know, like people who read comics know that's like both of these people have been Captain America, but we haven't seen another Captain America in over 10 years. So
Right.
I thought it was really cool to like. I think these two shows are really focusing on the future of the MCU, and I think they're really like laying the groundwork of like kind of, and we'll talk about later like what's going to come next. But I love how they're focusing on these characters that like the general viewer doesn't know who they are.
Right. Yeah. Another thing I loved, I know, we're here for hot takes and stuff, but there's a lot to love with this show. I love the introduction of Madripoor to the MCU. It's such a great location. Honestly, I could have seen Madripoor in Black Panther when they went to Korea. That could have been Madripoor also, but for whatever reason they delayed it. But it's perfect. It's exactly as I imagined it. It's kind of a mix of Hong Kong with the greatest hive of scum and villainy you can find. It's just this low life town, and Wolverine has a lot of ties to Madripoor, so hopefully they make that connection at some point later on. But very happy to see Madripoor. Quick thoughts on the new location?
It was cool to add that into it, because I feel like every kind of series like this or show, or like every kind of fantasy or whatever science fiction has like this kind of town that like are basically run by criminals. But it's cool. Like I don't even think the MCU really has one until now. I think it's a place they can revisit, because I know like you said, like Wolverine and the X-Men have some ties there. So I think that this fell into that WandaVision formula, or like of issue of and I didn't fall for it at all, this series of like Disney trying to troll people, because I'll go on like and see like what's trending after what episode, and a lot of people are like Madripoor, like oh my god, like it's happening now. I'm like, nah, I watched WandaVision. No. I'm not falling
it's just a city.
This hole again, yeah. But it's a good start, like to include that in future. Like I would love to see like if they like would like Shang-Chi, if they like somehow end up there, or like or whatever. Like I think there's a future there, and it's really cool, especially with the whole power broker situation. I think it'll be really cool how they kind of move forward with that.
How are you hunting for apartments in Madripoor?
Listen, I gotta convince the wife, but I don't think we'll be moving to Madripoor. I don't think I have the stones for Madripoor. I think I wouldn't succeed in Madripoor. I'd be probably that bartender serving drinks out. But yeah, I mean, it's just, to me, it's fine. Like I'm not a huge comic guy, like we've talked about, but I just look at it like I can't wait for the next couple movies or shows where there's a scene in Madripoor, or there's another reference to, remember that time in Madripoor, and all that kind of fun stuff. So yeah, it's fine to me, whatever. More hints towards X-Men coming, in the near future as well. So
yes. Let's give some love to the ladies, because we haven't really talked about this much. I don't have it in the notes,
or are we talking about the show?
Well, the wives get lots of love as it is. But the ladies in the show. So I actually don't have it in the notes, but I thought the actress that played Sam's sister was awesome. I thought she did a really good job. So I just wanted to throw that.
Yeah, went toe to toe with him in some scenes. Nice back and forth.
For sure. But Emily Van Camp, Sharon Carter is back, and loved seeing her expanded role again. Another one of these characters that we can dig further into. She kicks butt. So happy to see her back. Happy to see her taking down Madripoor goons in the docks, and then finding out that she is the power broker was pretty wild also. What do you think about her expanded role here?
So it was funny to me, the scene when they're at the docks and she's like kicking. It reminded me of like in a video game when there's the cut scene to like, and it's like now you have to handle the goons and like beat them all up, and there's way too many for one person to handle without anyone else like turning the corner. So I thought it was a bit silly, but she did seem pretty well equipped to handle herself from the last time we saw her in some of the other the movies for Cap. I felt like her story towards the end with the power broker kind of fell flat. I think a lot of people were guessing it online. Is she the power broker? And you know, I guess I see it where she's now going to play both sides, and there is kind of this gray line, is, you know, we'll talk about later, you know, where you can see with a lot of the characters of like, well, she's like a good person, but like Captain America's gone now, so like there's no real person to be like, wow, Steve really called me out, and I got to really rethink my life. It's more just like, yeah, you know, I'll be back, I'll be working for the U.S., but like I'll also be like selling weapon information and stuff out there. So yeah, I mean, more probably to come from her, but it was just it kind of felt a little flat to me. But yeah, definitely that scene on the docks was a bit silly, but she really handled her own.
Hands, you feeling Agent Carter here?
I love the scene on the docks. I thought and Harry, you're right. Like it was very like she handled herself very well. It was like very video game-ish, but like you could tell for some reason, like these shield agents seem like they're basically like superhumans without the serum. Like they're like, they just like, they can handle like these kind of like these bounty hunters coming through, or like
best of the best, baby.
Yeah. And I actually do agree with Harry with the power broker, like her being the power broker. I love to see like more of her coming forward. I just think that there was a lot of misdirect with the power broker going into like revealing it. So I wasn't entirely like surprised, like the way they were kind of handling her character. And when she was like hiring Batroc, and I think that at that point I was like, I didn't need a reveal. I'm like, I'm pretty sure she's going to end up being revealed. Like it almost seemed at that point almost too obvious. But like I was hoping, I threw a couple names out in my mind, which I would love for it to be like the power broker to be like. I was really hoping it'd be like Kingpin, which I thought would have been like great because I know like Matt Murdock is rumored to be in the next Spider-Man movie, and you know they're talking about bringing Charlie Cox
making us wait for it all.
Like Charlie, yeah, they're saying like Charlie Cox might be in No Way Home and all that kind of stuff. But I love that we're gonna get more of her, and I like how they introduced like with the end credits of her basically being a double agent, and you don't really know who she's working with. Like who did she like? I know like one of the points was who was she talking to? Like is there like a bigger kind of connection? Is it a character we already know? But I thought they did her character very well, because I wasn't happy like in Winter Soldier. I don't think she did anything really. Like I don't think she had any kind of action scene. Like she was in that control room and did something there for like a minute, and then like Civil War, she just showed up to give Cap his shield back. So I thought it was cool. I was cool to see like how like the trust between like Sam and Bucky having her, but they still don't know who she is, which I think is really going to add to a little bit like when we get to like more Captain America stories. So I am glad to see more of her. But I agree, the power broker kind of stuff fell a little bit flat for me as well.
Okay, fair. Some other kick butt ladies, the Dora Milaje came back. Oh man,
they were like such a good surprise to see. Like I didn't even think, I forgot Bucky was in Wakanda like for a while, where like that's where he got his arm and everything. So but yeah.
Well, and when I saw the Kimoyo beads, I didn't make the connection right away. I'm like, that's weird, these little black marbles. And then, you know, Ayo shows up and it's like, oh, snap. Like that was great. You know, they handed John Walker his butt. They weren't even super sensors. I was happy to see them get the shine and the respect that they deserve. They're not even like, you know, tracing them back in comics history, they weren't even, to my knowledge, a part of his original backstory. I think they were added in the mid 2000s as like or introduced basically, but they're just so cool. It was really neat to see, and I was a little bummed we didn't get to see Denai Guerrera. I thought she would have been a cool addition, but it's neat that they have another kind of alpha female as well with Ayo, and that you know, they can use her. What are you guys' thoughts on the Dora Milaje hands? Were you happy to see him back?
I thought it was really cool, like that, just because I feel like that's definitely, like you said, like with like an alpha female role, like I forgot he was in Wakanda, and then like at the end of that one episode when they're like they're here for Zemo, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Zemo has some beef with Wakanda too. Like he's like there's a lot of history in the MCU that like you don't really realize that Wakanda is kind of involved in. And I thought that whole fight scene with pretty much everyone against the Dora Milaje at one point, and pardon me, everyone listening, you know, me being a father, they did disarm Bucky.
Literally.
Yes. But I think that the Dora Milaje, I actually love the scene where you learn like Bucky's finally free and they test the code words on him.
It's a great scene.
I thought that was actually probably like my top 3 favorite scenes in the show. But like Bucky has such an extensive relation, like a backstory with them in such a short amount of time. And you know, it's kind of like they're very mission oriented. Like they don't care who gets in their way, whether it's Bucky or Sam, especially not John Walker, because they just own them right away. But I thought it was a really cool addition. Like they weren't a major part of the show, but where they were included, I think it fit really well with Bucky and Zemo.
Harry, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, whoo, sheesh. The Dora Milaje, totally, for me, just sprinkle them in every Marvel movie from now on. You know, Chris was saying, you know, they hold their own and everything, and it's like I love the line when they're talking to John Walker and they say the Dora Milaje have authority wherever the doors, or you know, authorization wherever the Dora Milaje may be, and that was just a really cool line. And you're just like, yeah, get them, because at that point, you know, John Walker's just chopping them out, just saying all kinds of rah-rah.
A little yapping dog.
But I mean, I think this is where, for me, the show works out really well, because they don't make it, you know, a real long storyline. They just kind of sprinkle it in there, you know, each one of those episodes, you know, they have their moment and then they're gone. So, but yeah, put the Dora Milaje in every Marvel movie just to check in, be like, how's everything going here? Is everybody operating right? Do we need to do anything? Do we need to step in and kick some butt? Absolutely would love to see, you know, it makes me more excited for Black Panther 2. You know, hopefully the Dora Milaje show up in more things, I would say, because they're awesome.
The only thing I don't understand is like, is when they took Zemo away, like they said they're taking him, like I thought they would take him to Wakanda, because Wakandans aren't going to treat that man like they're going to they're probably going to kill him.
Right.
But then they take him to the raft, which I know the raft is at this point, as far as the, you know, the MCU viewer knows, is probably the worst prison that the government has set up, because Captain America just breaks in and breaks everyone out right away at the end of Civil War. But then they say like they're taking Zemo to the raft, and I'm like kind of thinking like who has jurisdiction over the raft? Like, is it an international thing? Is it like why didn't they take them to Wakanda? Like if they have jurisdiction anywhere they say they do, why would they take them to this prison that already has one history of a major breakout?
Yeah, I mean, it is, you know, it is supposed to be super max, but but you're right, like you would expect the Wakandans to have something, but maybe
kill them.
Maybe it's maybe it is run by like Interpol or something, like NATO or whatever, and that's why, because Zemo committed crimes in multiple nations, not just Wakanda. So maybe, you know, that's very meta, but I'm guessing that's why. But that's a good point. I didn't think about that.
Worst prison. They had like 7 prisoners, then they had 1, which is Zemo now. Which and I would have loved for like.
Well, no, the super soldiers go there afterwards too. Like the flag smashers, they take them there.
Yeah. They don't make it.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
you're right.
Supposed to go there.
By himself.
Yeah. One world, baby.
I think that there definitely could be some raft scenes that kind of lead maybe to the Thunderbolts kind of teaming up, or you know, creating themselves.
And which I thought would have been
being
cool.
in prison, kind of running the show from there, probably too.
Yeah, like I think they kind of, and I don't want to say missed opportunity, because like I'm not going to tell like Marvel writers what they should be doing or anything. So, but I thought it would have been really cool to we get that post-credit scene with Sharon Carter, but I thought it would be cool to like kind of advance the Thunderbolts. Now they never announced a Thunderbolt series, so I don't think they want to kind of put too much on the plate to like have people anticipate it for. But I
Definitely
thought
save things.
I thought it'd been really cool if you have like Zemo, and then you have like go to some past characters. Like I know we said like Red Hulk, who's General Ross, but like I think they should go like a different route and have like Abomination, because he's somewhere in the world.
Yeah, he's still
Like,
floating around out there somewhere.
He's somewhere. Like I think characters like that would have been really cool, and they could have even like kind of with John Walker's character. Like once we get to the finale, I think he could have got sent to the raft. I think that would have been a great kind of, especially with like introduction of newer characters that are hopefully going to play a bigger part. Would have been a great introduction for that. But again, I'm not a Marvel writer, so I'm not going to tell them what they should and shouldn't do. So
moving on, we get the fight a little bit later on with John Walker versus the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I thought that was a pretty cool fight. I think it lived up to expectations for what it was. I thought Falcon, it was heartbreaking when he got his wings ripped, but it was cool seeing him, use the jetpack to break Walker's arm. What did you guys think about the fight? Did it live up to the hype? Howard, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I think it was definitely the best fight in the show. Going through all of them. I mean, maybe besides the Dora Milaje, just because I enjoyed that so much of everybody getting owned by them. But there was a lot at stake during this fight. John Walker questioning. He had to just watch his best friend die. He just killed a man. And now he thinks they're coming. And he's questioning himself as Captain America. He thinks, Sam's there for the shield and, what it represents. So I think there was a lot going on in that scene, that they don't really say, but they use through fighting. But yeah, it was probably my favorite fight scene in the show, in the series.
Nice. Hans, how about you?
I thought it was great. And there's a lot of Captain America Civil War in that fight with Cap and Bucky against Iron Man. Basically you have Sam and Bucky are just trying to disarm Walker. They're not trying to kill him. And they're trying to basically make sure get the shield and somehow just make sure he's not coming after us. Meanwhile, John Walker, who at this point this is peak John Walker for me, because he is just trying to he's unhinged at this point, completely unhinged,
full paranoia,
and has a super soldier running through him. From what I can understand, very new super soldier. He's just getting used to all of it, so he can't really control his emotions. And that's why I don't really see even though he's so unhinged, I thought they were leading him to be pretty much the major villain of this show, just because, especially of a Captain America show where he's not a true Captain America. And I thought to see how he's just trying to basically, he's so off the wall that he's trying to kill Sam and Bucky as at any chance he can. And then you also have that the final blow that they gave to him was great, where Bucky just swung him by the feet and Sam went in with the shield. But there was a lot of emotion in that, and even my favorite part of the fight was at the end where Sam Bucky picked up the shield and he just threw it to Sam, and he's kind of at that point you can tell he's don't give this up again.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, don't this is it kind of I looked at it Bucky was kind of saying looking after they just beat up Captain America, he was given the shield and basically saying don't let any of this happen again. The reason
this is happened, yours. Don't let it go.
Fault. This is your fault for the most part. But yeah, and I think it was cool to see how Sam held his own, and he had to use the wings and everything in battle to fight John, because if he didn't have them, he probably would have got killed. But I a lot of people are afraid that they nerfed Bucky and made him not as powerful. I don't agree with that. I think that he basically doesn't want to fight. He doesn't use I don't think he uses his left hand for the most part in the fight too much, and even says it later. He's I'm right-handed. It's an afterthought to use his hand. But I feel it was basically John Walker was a super soldier, because it enhanced all his abilities and his emotions, and he had a lot of that stuff running through him. Yeah. So I think to see them two kind of take him out was pretty cool.
Moving forward, we get the introduction of Julia Louis-Dreyfus as the Contessa, What?
What?
That was a shock to me because I am a huge Seinfeld fan. Loved her as Elaine Bennis in that. I had no idea that she was going to be part of the MCU. And apparently, it's coming out in the news over the last couple of days. They had her in like a hood and cloak on set, so nobody would know. But granted, this is a blind spot for me, Harry. I'm not huge on the Contessa. Yeah, I don't know a ton of stuff about her other than she eventually becomes Madam Hydra. But
okay.
Yeah, so the character, seeing the character there doesn't matter as much to me as seeing the actress there. It's like, okay, that's cool. What do you guys think about Julia Louis-Dreyfus?
This was like such a good introduction because I know they said there was going to be like a huge role that like it wasn't going to be revealed, and it was someone who wasn't in the MCU before. Again, my thoughts were going like, oh man, they're going to introduce Kingpin, but I put those hopes to rest really quick. But yeah, I mean, she's such a great actress, and I've said this before where I don't really necessarily like people like kind of like Melissa McCarthy, where she plays the same role, like kind of same character. I feel like Julie Louis-Dreyfus does the same thing, but not like it's in like there's so many different variations of that type of character she plays. Like I feel like they're all Elaine. Like she like plays the same kind of similar role in Arrested Development. I've seen some like episodes of Veep, and there's just like she's such a great actress that like it makes me feel better knowing they casted her because they're not going to waste her on 2 scenes in Falcon and Winter Soldier. And I know she has a relationship with Nick Fury in the past. Like they were going to introduce her into Black Widow.
You're right. That's what I heard.
So it was really cool to see her and like how they're going to include her moving forward. I feel like she's going to be like, even though Nick Fury's still around, she might be like a new Nick Fury type character. But yeah, I mean, I loved her whole shtick of like interacting with John. And is that John's wife or girlfriend?
Wife.
Okay.
Yeah. Pretty sure it's wife, yeah.
I thought that was like really cool how they did like she just was like kind of like, this is my name. You can call me Val, but not to my face. Say it in your head. And like, it just seemed like she was a great character to add like to that moment. Yeah. And I really hope and I think the plans from what I've heard is she's going to have a bigger role moving forward in the MCU. So I'm just hoping they like stick with that.
Makes sense. Our thoughts on JLD joining the MCU?
Huge fan of Seinfeld, huge fan of Elaine, but love her character in Veep. Our buddy Sean just powered through Veep in like a couple weeks, so he went through all the episodes. And you want to talk about unhinged? Her character on that show, while not psychotic, is definitely a wild card. She is absolutely hilarious on that, and she deserves all the praise for her character. What you guys are saying about her character and what it could be, sure, let's wait and see what it'll be. But I definitely feel as though we talked a little bit about it earlier. This gray line of is she kind of good? What are her intentions? And then I was also going to say, if that was John Walker's girlfriend. Peace, brother. Like I'm out. Like this relationship is over. That's definitely his wife. No sane woman is like, oh well, he just killed a man and everyone hates him now. I think I'll stick around
by his side. Yeah,
she isn't seen anywhere before.
Chance to get out.
She's not seen anywhere before that. Like that.
Seen in the locker room scene.
I forget. Okay, I forget the locker room scene then. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, again, another just little sprinkling. Let's introduce his character. Let's put her in here for a little bit, and let's watch her. Let's watch her grow. So very excited for that.
Cool. So moving on to the final episode, we get to see Falcon as Cap, and man, I just love it. I think the costume is almost directly lifted from the comics. Like it looks spot on to that. Not much to say other than just a great look. Any thoughts on the costume, boys?
It was definitely like, and I went to the comics afterward, like just to kind of get an idea like of what like how like I love doing that, just like after they like see like how the MCU kind of like translated to make it sometimes like more like realistic looking for the most part. But no, this was the costume, like everything fit so well, and you didn't know like what was in the box from Wakanda. Like I kind of had a feeling it was either going to be a new suit or a new set of wings. But the whole thing, and I love like the new Red Wing that's on there. Like I love how it basically like he scans the whole air, like the whole helicopter to see if anyone has flight training, and I think that was really really cool. Yeah, I mean his introduction where he just flew in and someone's like, what did someone say? Like, oh my God, is it the Falcon or whatever? And like, or no,
Oh, it's Black Captain America.
No, the other guy. There was somebody that says like, oh, did the government like say, or like how long have you been Captain America or something? Or like, it's not the Black Falcon part, but there's another part. He's like, I'm Captain America. And just like corrects the dude. I forget what he says, but but it's cool. I thought the whole scene was great. Like, he definitely like the whole training sequence in the episode before like is phenomenal. Like, I think like although when he does the one
Rocky
flip
moment, yeah,
when he does the one flip on the road. Watch that in slow motion again. That's not Anthony Mackie at all. It's very obvious. It's so funny because when he saw the flip, and I'm like, wait, I just want to see if that's really him. And then it's like, it looks like the dude's like 3 feet taller than Mackie and has like a whole bunch of facial hair. I'm like, that's not Mackie. Like,
God bless his stunt double.
It's a stunt double, but it's so funny how they like slow that part down. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely not Mackie.
Hare, what do you think about Falcons New Digs?
There's definitely what I would call like that pop moment when he flies through the window with his new, outfit, because you kind of see the silhouette of him flying through the sky, and then he, there's kind of that, if we were in the theater, people would be on their feet cheering. It's very exciting to see him, finally, take on the mantle and the role as Captain America, and I'm excited to see, where his, how his character progresses. But yeah, definitely some cool moments with him, but very excited to see, what the future holds. That's where I think some people might have a problem with the show, is that they wanted more of this earlier on, and this to kind of be the series of him and Bucky kind of going through. But I really kind of dug, the kind of him struggling, with the role, and wanting to step up as Captain America.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you more invested in the character if it's earned.
Yeah,
like Steve gave him the shield, sure, but like he didn't tell him to be Captain America or how to be Captain America or anything like that. Falcon kind of had to come to that on his own and see what America is and how he can best represent it. So, makes sense. Speaking of which, Cap's speech to the senators, I thought was fire. Like that, he kind of toured them a new one, and he's like, why are you calling these people terrorists? They want something, they're not being represented. And he wasn't condoning or condemning either side. He was basically telling them, cut out the bipartisanship and work together and have your constituents represented. Without getting too political, I think that's a great message to have. I'm sure it'll fall on deaf ears, but it's cool that they had that moment in the series, and it was really like that for me was the defining moment of, okay, he's Captain America now. Like, it wasn't him showing up in the suit or any of the action theatrics or anything. Like, it was him taking a stance and saying, this is what America could be, let's make it that. Hans, what are your thoughts on that?
All right, so I watched the finale twice. So the first time I watched it, like I felt like after coming off that, like the first, like, and the same with like WandaVision. Like WandaVision, the first, like that show, like both finales ended with like basically like action starting right away. Like, and so like after coming off of that, and I felt like, and I don't like mean this like kind of like any kind of wrong. I felt like the speech, like this is the first time I watched it, went on a little too long. Like, I feel like it was going to end, and then it started. It was kind of like, felt like how like Lord of the Rings, like the Return of the King ends, like where you think the speech is over, and then like more kind of goes on and on. So after I watched it the second time, and I kind of like paid a little closer attention to some of the details, like with the rest of the episode, and I like it really. I think that, without getting too political, I think this was kind of dialogue that needed to be in a show like this. And to kind of really fire home like a lot of issues that are like kind of like not necessarily happening in like a comic book show, but like in the real world as well. Yeah. And I thought it was really cool, like especially I've heard a lot of people say, and this is like kind of like unfortunate, where they say like they're not interested in seeing Sam Wilson as Captain America. And it's unfortunate to hear that. And then, but my favorite line of that whole speech, like it cracked me up, not crack me up, but like it was afterwards when he says, I'm a black man carrying the stars and stripes. But it only cracked me up because Bucky says later, he's like, I was texting, the only thing I heard was a black man in stars and stripes.
Right.
Yeah, I thought that was like great timing for that. But I think that especially with the conversation that follows with like that he had with Isaiah Bradley, and I think watching that and then watching this scene, I thought it was real like a kind of like a message that needed to be told. And it really kind of put that little bit of the Flag Smasher storyline, gave it some clarity of like he kind of doesn't make Carly out to be a villain. He makes the politicians out to be a villain. Now I a lot of people like in real life, always make arguments, say like politicians like do better. Like you should be doing better. You should be doing what's good for the people, not what's good for the people that are in the room.
Right.
And I thought that was really cool. And especially like you see like some of the struggles throughout the show, but you see the stuff happening in real life where it's just like, I think it puts Sam in that position of like a lot of us, like if we were ever in a room with 6 or 7 of these people, like senators or whatever, like what would we really say? So
Right.
I thought it was, the second time I watched it, I appreciated it a lot more as I was supposed to. So I like the whole message behind it was fantastic.
Our thoughts on the speech?
Yeah, I mean, I think there, as Chris mentioned a little bit, there was a lot of issues with, Anthony Mackie being, used as the next Captain America or having a black Captain America. And I feel like that moment specifically, I felt like they were addressing, some of the fans or some, I wouldn't even call them fans if they have a problem with, just because the, person is black who's playing Captain America,
Right.
kind of reaching out to those people and saying, hey, these are the reasons why he's going to be Captain America. And the only thing I think a lot of times, we as a society use media and use shows like this to be like, this is what we would want to, have conversations with our senators. But in real life, the senators would just walk away and not have time for it. You know what I mean? I was surprised one of them just didn't try to leave and people were like, no, listen to what he has to say. Because sadly, I don't think those, there's a lack of willing to hear voices, like that. But, I like you said, Greg, I think it is him kind of taking up that mantle and saying, I'm ready to be Captain America. I'm ready to take on this role. And it was great to see. I mean, it all kind of clicked for him in this, in the previous episode, kind of leading into this episode. But very excited to see Anthony Mackie and Sam Wilson's Captain America going forward.
Mm-hmm. So we do have, a little bit of extra stuff after this, but for all intents and purposes, that's the main bulk of the series wrapped up. And, I thought the show wrapped up pretty well. Harry, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think, at first I thought the show was going to be similar to Mandalorian, where like it's, it's a Bucky and, Sam Wilson kind of adventure. Then I thought, we were kind of going to get, I guess, them dealing with this other Captain America and how does that, clash with that. I do think it ended well, but I'm excited, for more. I want to see kind of this relationship because at the end of it, I'm like, dude, I want to see Sam and Bucky, have more heart to hearts. I want to see them hug. You know what I mean? Like I want to see that. So I want to see their relationship.
See them fix more boats.
Yeah, I want to see them have more, montage moments.
Wait, guys, wait. More boats, or you call them more friendships?
There it is. Another dad joke from the one and only Hands.
But I think the while I don't think I don't think it was as good as WandaVision, and I know that's kind of spoiling a little bit of questions we'll ask later, but I thought it was well done, and I'm excited to see if they'll do more Falcon episodes. And how that kind of series can grow. I'm actually kind of excited for that storyline.
Okay, Hands, you took umbrage with the way this wrapped?
Yeah. So I
hot takes.
Get spicy, baby.
Like I feel like the way like the finale started, like, and I've made this like complaint. I think with WandaVision, like we don't really know, or like another show, like we don't know exactly how the time passes from one scene to another. And I feel like there were a lot of deleted scenes to like explain a lot of stuff. And I don't like one of the things, like we didn't really talk about John Walker. Like we talked a little bit about John Walker, but like one of the things I didn't like I had like kind of a problem with is how his story kind of wrapped up. Now it was weird because it was like at the end of the last episode, he's basically dishonorably discharged. and then he's making his own shield out of like aluminum.
Walking the streets of New York, just like,
Yeah.
hey, Cap's
And-
back again.
And he's like, and he's made like they lead him up to be like, I actually thought he was going to be like the big, like kind of like be the lead villain at the end, and then at like the last scene, like he walks in, he like yells Carly's name, and then he like basically throws his cheap shield, and then he gets like starts getting beat up, and then like Bucky saves him, and I just didn't like that because I'm like, at that point from then on, like people spent 5 episodes hating John Walker, and immediately they turn him into like a good, like you think he's going to be like a kind of like a problem. He ends up being like such a good guy and corny by the end, because once they like eventually name him US Agent, he's like a Boy Scout where he's like so happy and he's just like he's just like seems like he's like mentally okay. Like sorry man, like it's just like weird. Like
yeah, but that just goes to show for me that he's unhinged because he vacillates between those emotions so wildly.
Yeah.
Like I think you're right. He was feeling that in that moment, but he can also turn on a dime and go back to Psycho Walker.
That's true, I guess. Yeah, and I hope they like, and I know they'd be dumb to not use him in the future. Like, and especially like he is part of Thunderbolts, I believe, right? Is that?
Yeah, he was in Thunderbolts before. Yeah.
So I think like that would be a really cool like kind of like to bring him back. Like I said, I love the character. I love Wyatt Russell. I just didn't like how because like at the end, like him and Bucky like were like BFFs for like a couple minutes. I'm like, you just tried to kill me like a week ago. Like you literally tried to cut my head off with a shield, and now they're all like buddy, and it just like I just felt like there were a couple scenes that were like I would have loved to have seen a scene with John Walker and Sam Wilson, because like he even like Sam even says he's like, there's people here that hate me because I'm Captain America, and he looks at John. And John kind of like, gives him a nod, like, all right, like you are Captain America, like, But I feel like some of this like stories were like really weirdly wrapped up. But I think that was one of them. Not saying I hated the finale. I do like it. I just feel like there were some scenes that they should have included in. I think the whole like revelation of the power broker was like, it felt rushed. And like Carly like shoots like shot like I don't know, someone like Sharon shoots Carly and then Carly shoots Batroc, or the other way. Like there's like 4 people get shot at the same time, and I don't know who shot who, and it just I don't know. I just thought it was a little
Greedo moment.
It got a little messy. It got a little messy towards like for a couple minutes. But other than that, like Harry said, the fact that they just announced like a Captain America 4, which is like it's going to be with Sam Wilson, which is great. I love. Yeah, I think they announced it like yesterday or today.
Yeah, it's new news.
Yeah, it's like in development, which is great. Whether or not if they're gonna get a season 2, but we're gonna see more of Sam Wilson, which is great. But I didn't feel like this was as good as the WandaVision finale. I know Harry, you said you weren't like kind of didn't think it was as good, but I thought that's not complaining. Like WandaVision was great, like a fantastic finale. This was kind of the same. Like I kind of felt like there were a few missed, like kind of swings and misses, but for the most part, like it definitely wanted me wanting more, like for like these characters. So, and I know like we're gonna see more Zemo, we're gonna see more Bucky and Sam, which is good. So there is a future for them, which is hopeful. So I'm kind of glad. Like part of me is glad they didn't wrap everything up, because they still have more stories to tell, and I'm sure that was their plan to kind of not close everything.
Okay. So let's get to some overall questions. Like, how did we like the show overall? I'll start. For me, I thought it was really good. Like I mentioned, I had a little bit of hesitation after the first episode, but it really picked up for me, and I thought it was a very, very well done show. So yeah, I think they did as best as they could with that, with the exception of maybe a little bit of weakness on the Flag Smashers part. But overall, I really enjoyed it. Harry, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to talk about it because it is a little bit different of a form. We only have WandaVision really to compare. I mean, I think this would be maybe middle tier for me if we had to like do an overall Marvel ranking. I definitely enjoyed the Sam Bucky stuff. I know we talked about Bucky's humor, but like when he makes that Hobbit reference about, it's one of the big three, or when Sam's talking about it, one of the big three, and he's like, what are you talking about? That's not a thing. And they mentioned the Hobbit, just like chef's kiss to like cross intersecting everything in my household, in which we care about, Marvel and Lord of the Rings. But yeah, I mean, I felt the show was good. I enjoyed, like, I feel like it had a lot of highs for me. Like, I feel as though I enjoyed some of these episodes more than some of the Wanda episodes, but I definitely feel Wanda was the better show. Like I said, like I think Chris has kind of alluded to a lot with kind of like, I felt like it was kind of going in certain directions and kind of pull back. And then they really, like that last episode, I really was kind of, like I said, I paused it right after the big, fight, and when everything was kind of done. And it was like pretty much like 2/3 to, half of the episode. And I was just kind of like, okay, like we're doing the Marvel thing where it's like, we got to have the big action set piece, the fight, that kind of, solves everything, instead of, having long conversations about it, which, I'm more of a fan of with that. That's why I really enjoyed episode 5 a lot. But like I said, I think some of the highs for me were definitely higher than WandaVision, but I felt like WandaVision was the better overall show for it.
And so what did you think overall, and how did it compare to WandaVision for you?
So I think that they're two very different shows, because WandaVision's dealing with like, mystical kind of like the dark arts in terms of like the MCU. And this is more grounded. WandaVision had a lot of like kind of pieces to a puzzle that were like, you had to keep finding these pieces and like eventually be put together. I feel like Falcon and Winter Soldier, like they basically gave you the pieces and like put it, like they laid all their pieces out right away and said like pretty much there weren't like too many surprises in terms of like other than like the power broker, and like introducing some characters in terms of like Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Isaiah Bradley, but there wasn't anything that really like blew me away in terms of like blowing like kind of like what I'm talking, like secrets or anything. Like they kind of were straightforward with their storyline. But with that being said, like I would definitely put WandaVision, I think, a little more as an overall show, a little higher than Falcon and Winter Soldier. But Harrier's right. I think there were better, bigger moments like for me, and like I love the relationship more between Bucky and Sam than like Wanda and Vision. I love like their whole dialogue, their whole relationship, where like Sam, I feel like Sam hated Bucky, but Bucky never necessarily like hated Sam. It was just like he wanted to be on his good side, but Sam was kind of just like brushing him off. And I think the way like the kind of how it wraps up is like you kind of have like Bucky found his like new Steve, like for the most part, like his new best friend, and it's heading in like we're having, I think it really set up the future of the MCU from having like a dark art standpoint of having like WandaVision had that side. Now we're gonna like tackle some realism, and eventually they're gonna like cross. And like I'm really like excited, like especially with like Loki coming out. We're gonna get like a whole different like kind of genre with the MCU. And it's wherever it's leading. I know we're going to touch on it in a minute. Like I'm really excited. I guess like if I had to rate this series, I'd give it like an 8 out of 10, with WandaVision being like a 9 out of 10. But I think the show was more character development than WandaVision was necessarily. Like as an for all of its characters, I think WandaVision really only focused on the development of Wanda. But I think look, Falcon and Winter Soldier had a lot more characters to handle in terms of that kind of area. But yeah.
Okay. And for the record, I did enjoy WandaVision more as a show. If I were rating the two, I think I'd probably give WandaVision like a 9.5 and this maybe like an 8. But again, outstanding show, and I think everybody should watch it. So based on Captain America and the Winter Soldier and WandaVision, are we excited for Loki? I know, Hans, you mentioned you were. How about you, Hare?
Yeah, I mean, I think Loki is something. I mean, the trailer dropped, and Owen Wilson, wow, was I forgot he was cast in it for a while there, because there was not much coming from the show. I think it'll have definitely kind of more of a WandaVision mystical type of element to it, obviously. But I think I think the show for Loki will do a little bit of answering hopefully some questions of like, where was Loki during some things and kind of where was he behind the scenes and what was going on there. So I know that premieres in June, so we got some time to, get and, formulate some more guesses for that. But I believe that's shorter than these two, right? It's only going to be 4 episodes or something, I think I heard, or I don't know if
I
I'm
have
wrong.
no idea.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I'm just guessing off of something that I heard, but I'm sure we'll be talking about that. But yeah, very excited for that show. I mean, I think, one thing I can say is, I'm in it now. I would say early on in my Marvel life, it was just like, whatever, these movies are kind of silly and they don't really do anything. And then you end up watching your 15th Marvel movie and you're like, yeah, I'm kind of invested at this point. So it's kind of almost like a bad marriage. Like I'm just kind of in it and, kind of going through the motions a little bit. But, these two shows, and I think, no pun intended, but like the end of Endgame is like, we're starting something anew. We have this world that we've kind of built and, this is how it's going to continue and grow. And, I hope they continue to challenge us and I hope they continue to kind of, make things more interesting to watch. But, we'll see with that, but very excited for it.
Yeah, likewise, very excited for Loki. The vibes I'm getting from it is kind of like a mix between Guardians of the Galaxy with like kind of offbeat characters and Ant-Man, where I think this is going to be kind of like a heist type scenario where Loki's got to get in and I'm just speculating on this, but based on the trailer, it looked like he's going to have to fix some kind of problems that he might have caused with timelines or whatever. I don't know. But a cross between those two movies, but very excited for it. Definitely looking forward to Loki.
It's gonna be see like where his like character goes in the MCU, because I honestly thought like his story was done after Infinity War, and I was kind of happy where his story lined up, because I love the character of Loki, but I don't mean this like any kind of wrong way. Like I'm kind of done with him, but I love I don't want to see him in Love and Thunder. Like I really don't, because he's gonna do the same thing he did in Ragnarok, where he's just kind of like him and like I love their relationship with Thor, but I feel like it's something that like we kind of need to move away from, like that formula. I love Loki's character, and I think like the way like from what the trailer released on the show, like it looks like it's pretty much built for like it's going to be like a really good show for his character. But I hope that Loki's not like going to be like a central figure moving forward in the MCU. Like I would be okay if this doesn't move the MCU forward, like maybe introduce like a bigger character moving forward. But I hope this doesn't like kind of like set too much in motion for like future shows and TV or movies.
So it's interesting because Kevin Feige said in an interview that out of all the 3 shows so far, Loki, WandaVision, and Captain America and the Winter Soldier, he could see Loki being the one that gets a season 2. So I don't know, what that means. Well, I mean, I know what that means, but like in terms of the character, I'm kind of with you guys. Like I'd be okay with Loki wrapping up, or I should say I'm kind of along the lines with you, Hans. I'd be okay with Loki wrapping up his story in this. I don't need to see him reintroduced again into the MCU. I definitely don't want him in Love and Thunder, because he didn't really have anything to do with that storyline in the comics, like at all. So, just, give me Loki content and his own self-contained thing. If you want to make it, 5 seasons or whatever, cool, I'm on board. But like, I don't need to see him in the MCU proper running around again, because similar to you, I feel like they've kind of done what they can with him, and it was a great run. But I don't need more on top of what they've done.
I was just going to finalize by saying I'd be interested to see if they end this show maybe on a cliffhanger. Like maybe nothing gets, resolved in Black Widow, but the fact that they don't have something right directly after, I mean, I guess Black Widow is directly after it, but that was a project that was supposed to be before it. I wonder if they'll leave kind of something maybe lingering for us for either Spider-Man or for, something in 2022. I think that would be really cool and something I would like to see them do to kind of keep the people guessing for a little while.
Yeah. And then last year we have what is next for these characters. So as we mentioned earlier, Captain America 4 being announced. The showrunners for Captain America and the Winter Soldier are kind of helming it. I don't know if I think they're writing. I don't think directing.
Just writing. From what just writing.
So I'm assuming, that's where we're going to see all of these characters and probably the loose threads with the power broker and all that stuff tie up. I'm on board for more Cap, no matter who's wearing the mantle.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe not John Walker, but Hans, what do you think? You excited for Cap 4?
Oh, I am. Yeah, and I think there's Captain America is such a crazy history, and there's a lot of villains that haven't either have been used and haven't been kind of used properly. Like I would love to see a Red Skull again. Kind of stuff like that. Even though his relationship mainly is with Steve Rogers, not Sam Wilson. But I mean, we have Zemo that's going to be kind of still around. I hope that Bucky's going to be in Captain America 4. I would almost guarantee it. And I think as a whole, as the MCU, where I said before, WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier Captain America and Winter Soldier are going to basically at one point converge, and I think it kind of sets up Val sets up perfectly where she says I think as she was speaking as the writer saying things are about to get weird when she tells John Walker, and I think there's a lot of with her relationship with Nick Fury, and I kind of had a discussion with myself the other day about this. Was I think this is all leading with Secret Invasion coming. I think that the next Avengers movie is going to be Secret Wars.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think that because I know with Nick Fury, they want to have Val as a bigger character. I think that I would even think I even thought Sharon Carter might even be a Skrull, that kind of stuff. I think there's a lot of potential going forward with the MCU, and I would I think that's a possibility, but we'll see.
Cap 4, you on board?
Oh, 100%. I hope, I would say I'm more interested in where Bucky kind of goes from here as well. What kind of Julia Louis-Dreyfus is, Contessa is kind of those little kind of, what's Zemo going to do. But I think, kind of one thing we talked a lot about was kind of these gray lines where is this person on a good side or a villain? We mentioned Sharon Carter with her coming back to the States and being welcomed back in, but she's calling some random person being now we have access to these weapons. I think technology is going to play a big role. If this takes place before Spider-Man, even with Spider-Man, there was so much with the drones and how they were used by what's his face? I can't think of Jake Gyllenhaal's Mysterio. Thank you. I couldn't think of the character. So I think these kind of gray lines and kind of, who are these people and what role are they playing and whose side are they on? Secret Invasion, I know nothing about it, but I imagine that it's a secret that this invasion is happening. But I think that's actually the Nick Fury show. So maybe Secret Wars, whatever. There's definitely secrets. That's definitely that's what I could say. So I think the gray line is definitely going to be towed a lot with these going through. And luckily we have Captain America here to kind of keep us on the straight and narrow.
Absolutely. Well, folks, that is it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, be sure to share, subscribe, comment, leave us a review on iTunes, all of that good stuff. As far as other stuff going on, I've got a new Papa Spice challenge that I'll be filming this week. That'll be dropping sometime this week, most likely on Friday. Big announcement for our next show of Hot Takes. We're going to be doing video game movies in honor of the new Mortal Kombat coming out. So we'll be touching base on that, as well as all the live action video game movies, or most of them anyway, and our thoughts on them. So that's pretty much all I had. Hans, you got anything for the peeps?
Not yet, but just keep an eye out on Reddit. I'm going to be starting a John Walker fan page. So when I make that, please join and leave some comments below.
Well done, sir. And Harry, anything for the peeps?
Yeah, I was gonna say with that statement from Hans, he will no longer be welcome in my household because my wife will not allow that. Also, Greg didn't mention what he's going to be doing for his challenge. He's going to be eating fire, so that'll be pretty cool. He's just going to be ingesting fire. But no, what I have for the people is this will be posted after the Oscars, which are this Sunday. We're recording obviously before that, so hopefully looking to see Daniel Kaluuya win. Hoping to see wins for Judas and the Black Messiah and things. A couple other movies, Minari, The Father, and Sound of Metal. Sound of Metal was probably one of my favorite movies this year. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, go see it. I don't think it's going to get a lot of love this Oscar season, but I think it's one of the best movies that I saw in 2020. So I would highly suggest that. So, but yeah, Daniel Kaluuya for supporting actor there for that. So definitely look out for that. He's one of the best actors out there right now.
Okay.
Was that directed by Brian Bogdanovich?
Peter Bogdanovich?
Peter.
No, it wasn't. No, it's okay. You sound like an idiot now.
Crickets.
I don't. So yeah.
Oof, that was
Peter.
a bomb.
Peter, you're thinking
that's a shout way back.
That was a bomb. Oh, I'm sad that.
Go listen to what was that? Our director's episode.
That was our director's episode.
That was a car crash of a joke.
No, you know what? It wasn't our director's episode. It was our comedies one where we talked about our favorite comedies.
Where you had lots of movies that weren't actually.
Listen, if we do an episode where like you guys are forced to watch something, you guys are definitely being forced to watch one of those two movies, and come here and tell me that you didn't enjoy it and have a great time.
That joke wasn't a comedy.
No, well, it was a tragedy. So
it was an attempt. All right. With that said, thank you everybody again for joining us. We'll see you in 2 weeks. And everybody, as always, live spicy.
Spicy.